ChristianGeekCentral.com.
Do you like games? I like games. Do you like games too? I like games too. I like games too.
Alright, next game up. Oh, okay. Moving on to Super Nintendo now. This looks like a job for GQ Clark Kent. I remember this storyline when it happened in, I want to say like 1990, 91. I thought they were killing him for good, you know, because I'd been hearing for a while, Superman's boring, Superman's boring. I thought, wow, they finally decided to give up on him, and they're killing him. You know, it didn't really occur to me that it might be just a gimmick. If you watch the DVD, or if you buy the DVD of the animated movie that adapts this story, there's a great special feature. It's about like 40 minutes long about the story behind killing him in the comics. And they had never planned to kill him for good, but they pulled it off so well. I mean, they stopped publishing all 3 or 4, however many of books Superman had at the time. They stopped publishing them for 3 months. And the rationale behind that was, you know, people were getting previews magazine and stuff, so they could see the solicitations ahead of time for the upcoming issues, and so they knew that if people knew that there was going to be an issue right away next month of Superman, that they would know, okay, well, he's not coming, you know, he's not going to die for good. So they made the decision to stop publishing Superman books for 3 months in order to just really sell readers on the point that, yeah, he is dead. So this, but man, I was a little bit sad about it. I remember I wrote a poem in junior high. I was in 7th grade, I think, at the time. And I wrote a poem just about how Superman would be missed. I wish I still had it. I was writing lots of raps in 7th grade. Raps about things. I had a rap for the Batman movie. I wonder if those were recorded on some cassette tape somewhere that my parents have. Because I like to record myself doing it too. Yeah, the first time I read that whole story was in trade paperback. Only Superman can save us now. That's cheesy. But I remember I wasn't really collecting comics monthly, and certainly not reading Superman. But a friend of mine was like, yeah, Superman's dead. I'm like, oh my gosh, who killed him? It must have been Lex Luthor. He says, no, Doomsday. I'm like, who the crap is Doomsday? Because Doomsday really... he only works... I'm not the first to say this, I'm probably the last to say this, but he only works as an unstoppable beast that takes down Superman. That's all he's good for. He has lost all of his threat and power and level of interest ever since Superman beat him. And Superman's whooped his butt like 3 or 4 times, I don't know how many times now. I'm following him, but I gotta beat up street thugs who are able to hurt me with their Molotovs and chainsaws. See, look at that. Heat vision, I should have like blown a hole through his chest. I think that the best game featuring Superman as a playable character is not a Superman game. It's Justice League Heroes, which I'm going to get to a little bit later tonight. I really hated this Superboy character, but I love who they kind of evolved him into in the comics. Who is the real Superman? Okay, I'm going to tell you my theory. I remember hearing about the different Superman characters, and when I finally read the story, it wasn't spoiled for me about how Superman came back, and the big question was, okay, which of these guys is Superman? Because they were saying, like, okay, the guy with the sunglasses, he had like memories and knowledge of Krypton, and I think there were hints of like knowledge of Clark Kent, and that was weird. And then the cyborg Superman, but he was like made of energy or something. Oh, and he's got this cannon instead of heat vision. That's cool. But the cyborg Superman he had DNA. He was a match for Superman's DNA. So it's like, well, how do you beat DNA? It's got to be him. So I didn't know what the last son of Krypton guy with that's what they called him, with the sunglasses. I don't know what his deal was, but I was pretty sure he wasn't the real Superman. But this DNA thing, I was like, Cyborg Superman, oh my gosh, it's got to be Superman, but he's all jacked up, you know? I mean, maybe he could eventually heal and somehow, but man, he looks terrible. And he had some knowledge of Clark Kent's identity, and so it was just like, man, it was hard to tell. But then at the same time, you had John Henry Irons, who of the four of them was behaving most like Superman. I mean, I knew it wasn't Superboy. He was a clone, okay? And you know. But John Henry Irons, of all of them, the Man of Steel, the guy with the, you know, who later became Steel, I thought, well, this guy, I wonder if something happens to Kryptonian spirits when they die, like their spirit gets separated from their body, but then looks for a host to survive in or something. I mean, who knows what death is for Kryptonians? And so what I thought they were going to do was have the cyborg Superman be like the remains of Superman somehow, and he would eventually have to be merged with the spirit that was inside the Man of Steel. And of course they didn't do that. They said, none of the above. It's too monotonous. It's just a side-scrolling beat-em-up, you know? And the whole novelty of playing a Superman game and playing as these different Superman characters, it's long since worn off. I mean, at the time, I think this was about as good as you could do making a Superman game. And it's probably one of the best Superman games, if not the best Superman game that's ever been made. Okay, so this guy, oh, that looks cool. And that's taken right from the comics. There's like there was a promotional image of this guy, that's what he looked like. It was, oh man. Their attention to detail and fidelity to the source material was really, their desire to be true to the source material was very clear to me. It kind of makes me want to read this story again, actually. I'm sure it's better in my memory. Yeah, they didn't quite get this guy right. This is Superboy. And he had a telekinetic touch where he could touch things and they would just like blow apart. Not through explosion, really. They would just kind of like disassemble really fast in multiple directions. I must proceed with my... Or he should be like, why? I must proceed with my plan. Because he has no lips. Don't let the outfit fool you. I'm Superman. And I'm back. With new and improved Fabio hair. His hair kind of looked like Fabio, I guess, to start out with. And then it slowly kind of changed into like mullet Superman. Finally got his hair cut just before he got married. It was cool at the time. I don't know what else to tell you. Oh, he fires his rivets. Oh, they look kind of like energy. I wonder if firing, you know, railroad spikes was a little bit too violent. Yeah, it totally used to be worth it to me to play through this whole game. Not so much anymore. They're too late to stop the destruction of Metropolis. Oh, sorry. I don't like to stop the destruction of Metropolis. Launch a missile! Engine City has just launched a missile heading straight for Metropolis. That sounds nothing like a big black man. Amazing! What I've experienced defies description. I don't know. It's a pretty standard beat 'em up. Alright. New game. Now this one, if you haven't played The Death and Return of Superman, I'm thinking there's no way that you've played this next one.
ChristianGeekCentral.com